satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead during one's lifetime becomes liberated from the gross and material conditions, thus being freed from all modes of nature. He achieves unlimited spiritual bliss. Purport by His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the previous verse, it has been explained that one should treat all living entities with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. By such behavior, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and upon his satisfaction, the devotee immediately becomes free from all material conditions. The Lord also confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who sincerely and seriously engages in my service immediately becomes situated in the transcendental stage, wherein he can enjoy unlimited spiritual bliss. Everyone in this material world is struggling hard in order to achieve blissful life. Unfortunately, people do not know how to achieve it. Atheists do not believe in God, and certainly they do not please Him. Here it is clearly said that upon pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one immediately attains to the spiritual platform and enjoys unlimited blissful life. To become free from material existence means to become free from the influence of material nature. The word samprasame, which is used in this verse, means being satisfied. A person should act in such a way that the Lord is satisfied by the activity. It is not that he himself is to be satisfied. Of course, when the Lord is satisfied, the devotee automatically becomes satisfied. This is the secret of the process of bhakti yoga. Outside of bhakti yoga, everyone is trying to satisfy himself. No one's trying to satisfy the Lord. Karmis ghostly try to satisfy their senses, but even those who are elevated to the platform of knowledge also try to satisfy themselves in a subtle form. Karmis try to satisfy themselves by sense gratification, and jnanis try to satisfy themselves by subtle activities or mental speculation, and thinking themselves to be God. Yogis also try to satisfy themselves by thinking that they can achieve different mystic perfections, but only devotees try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's process of self-realization is completely different from the processes of the karmis, jnanis, and yogis. Everyone else is trying to satisfy himself, whereas the devotee tries only to satisfy the Lord. The devotional process is completely different from others. By working to please the Lord, by engaging his senses in the Lord's loving service, the devotee is immediately situated on the transcendental platform and he enjoys unlimited blissful life. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text number 15. The creation of the material world begins with the 5 elements, and thus everything, including the body of a man or a woman, is created of these elements by the sexual life of man and woman. The number of men and women in this material world is further increased. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When Swayambhuva Manu saw that Dhruva Maharaj understood the philosophy of Vaishnavism, and yet was still dissatisfied because of his brother's death. He gave him an explanation of how this material body is created by the five elements of material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also confirmed. Prakrite kriyamanani. Everything is created, maintained, and annihilated by the material modes of nature. In the background, of course, there is the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Mayadakshena, in the 9th chapter, Krishna says, under my superintendence, material nature is acting. Swayam Bhuvamanu wanted to impress on Dhruva Maharaj that the death of the material body of his brother was not actually the Yaksha's fault. It was an act of the material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has immense varieties of potencies, and they act in different gross and subtle ways. It is by such powerful potencies that the universe is created, although grossly it appears to be no more than the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Similarly, the bodies of all species of living entities, whether human beings or demigods, animals or birds, are also created by the same five elements. And by sexual union, they expand into more and more living entities. That is the way of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. One should not be disturbed by the waves of material nature in this process. Dhruva Maharaja was indirectly advised not to be afflicted by the death of his brother because our relationship with the body is completely material. His real self, spirit soul, is never annihilated or killed by anyone. Text number 16. Manu continued, my dear King Dhruva, it is simply by the illusory material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by the interaction of the three modes of material nature that creation, maintenance, and annihilation take place. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. First, creation takes place with the ingredients of the five elements of material nature. Then, by the interaction of the modes of material nature, maintenance also takes place. When a child is born, the parents immediately see to its maintenance. This tendency for maintenance of offspring is present not only in human society, but in animal society as well. Even tigers take care of their cubs, although their propensity is to eat other animals. By the interaction of the material modes of nature, creation, maintenance, and also annihilation take place inevitably. But at the same time, we should know that all is conducted under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is going on under that process. Creation is the action of the Raja Guna, the mode of passion. Maintenance is the action of Sattva Guna, the mode of goodness. And the annihilation is the action of Tamo Guna, the mode of ignorance. We can see that those who are situated in the mode of goodness live longer than those who are situated in the Tamo Guna or Raja Guna. In other words, if one is elevated to the mode of goodness, he is elevated to a higher planetary system where the duration of life is very great. Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvasta, great rishis, sages, and sannyasis who maintain themselves in the Sattva Guna or the perfect the perfect mode of material goodness are elevated to a higher planetary system. Those who are transcendental even to the material modes of nature are situated in the mode of pure goodness. They attain eternal life in the spiritual world. Text number 17. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. He is the remote cause of the creation of this material cosmic manifestation. When he gives the impetus, many other causes and effects are produced, and thus the whole universe moves just as iron moves by the integrated force of a magnet. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. How the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead works within this material world is explained in this verse. Everything is happening by the energy of the Supreme Lord. The atheistic philosophers who do not agree to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the original cause of creation think that the material world moves by the action and reaction of different material elements. A simple example of the interaction of elements occurs when we mix soda and acid, and the movement of effervescence is produced. But one cannot produce life by such interaction chemicals. There are 8,400,000 different species of life with different wishes and different actions. How the material force is working cannot be explained just on the basis of chemical reaction. A suitable example of this connection is that the potter and the potter's wheel. The potter's wheel rotates, and several varieties of earthen pots come out. There are many causes for the earthen pots, but the original cause is the potter, who sets a force on the wheel. That force comes by his superintendence. The same idea is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Behind all material action and reaction, there is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna says that everything depends on his energy, and yet he is not everywhere. The pot is produced under certain conditions of action and reaction of material energy, but the potter is not in the pot in a similar way. The material creation is set up by the Lord, but he remains aloof. As stated in the Vedas, he simply glanced over it, and the agitation of matter immediately began. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also said that the Lord impregnates the material nature with the part and parcel jivas. Thus, the different forms and different activities immediately ensue. Because of the different desires and cosmic activities of the jiva soul, different types of bodies and different species are produced. In Darwin's theory, there is no acceptance of the living entity as spirit soul, and therefore his explanation of evolution is incomplete. Varieties of phenomena occur within this universe on account of the actions and reactions of the three material modes. But the original creator or the cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is mentioned here as Nimitta Matram, the remote cause. He simply pushes the wheel with his energy. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the Supreme Brahman has transformed himself into many varieties of forms, but that is not the fact. He is always transcendental to the actions and reactions of the material gunas, although he is the cause of all causes. Lord Brahma says, therefore, in the Brahma Samhita 5.1, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. There are many causes and effects, but the original cause is Sri Krishna. Text number 18. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature. And thus, varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that he is acting, but he is not the actor. He is killing, but he's not the killer. Thus, it is understood that only by his inconceivable power is everything happening. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word durvibhavya means inconceivable by our tiny brain. And vibhakta virya means divided in varieties of potencies. This is the right explanation of the display of creative energies in the material world. We can better understand the mercy of God by an example. A government state is always supposed to be merciful, but sometimes, in order to keep law and order, the government employees and the government employs its police force, and thus punishment is meted out to the rebellious citizens. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always merciful and full of transcendental qualities, but certain individual souls have forgotten their relationship with Krishna and have endeavored to lord it over material nature. As a result of their endeavor, they are involved in varieties of material interaction. It is incorrect to argue, however, that because the energy issues from the Supreme Personality of God, he is the actor. In the previous verse, the word nimitta matram indicates that the Supreme Lord is completely aloof from the action and reaction of this material world. How is everything being done? The word inconceivable has been used. It is not within the power of one's small brain to comprehend, unless one accepts the inconceivable power and energy of the Lord. One cannot make any progress. The forces which act are certainly set up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is always aloof from their action and reaction. The varieties of energies produced by the interaction of material nature produce the varieties of species of life and their resultant happiness and unhappiness. How the Lord acts is nicely explained in the verse. Vishnu explained in the verse Vishnu Purana. Fire is situated in one place, while the heat and light produced by the fire act in many different ways. Another example given is that the electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but by its energies, many different types of machinery move. The place, but its origins, Another example given is that the electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but by its energies, many different types of machinery work. The production is never identical with the original source of the energy, but the original source of energy, being the prime factor, is simultaneously one and different from the product. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya, Veda, Abheda, Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms, as Brahma, as Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates. As the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by the incarnation of Shiva, he also attains. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, in other words, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, is always part from these actions and reactions of material nature. Okay, that's a very nice statement by the Lord. Text 19. My dear Dhruva, the Supreme Personality Godhead is ever existing, but in the form of time. He is the killer of everything. He has no beginning, although he's the beginning of everything. Nor is he ever exhausted, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. The living entities are created through the agency of the Father and killed through the agency of death. But he is perpetually free of birth and death. Purport by his divine grace is the Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The supreme authority and inconceivable power of the Supreme Personality Godhead can be minutely studied from this verse. He is always unlimited. That means that he has no creation or end. He is, however, death in the form of time, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, I am death. I take away everything in the end of life. Eternal time is also without beginning, but it is the creator of all creatures. The example is given of touchstone, which creates many valuable stones and jewels, but does not increase in power. Similarly, creation occurs many times. Everything is maintained, and after a time, everything is annihilated. But the original creator, or the Supreme Lord, remains untouched and undiminished in power. The secondary creation is made by Brahma, but Brahma is created by the Supreme Godhead. Lord Shiva annihilates the whole creation, but at the end, he is also annihilated by Vishnu. Lord Vishnu remains. In the Vedic hymns, it is stated that in the beginning there was only Vishnu, and that he alone remains at the end. An example can help us to understand the inconceivable potency of the Godhead created by, an example can help us to understand the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. In the recent history of warfare, the Supreme Personality Godhead created a Hitler, and before that, a Napoleon Bonaparte, and they each killed many living entities in war. But in the end, Bonaparte and Hitler were also killed. People are still very much interested in writing and reading books about Hitler and Bonaparte and how they killed so many people in war. Year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement, but no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They're interested only in him, meaning Krishna, who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Okay. Yeah, just reading mundane history is not really what you could say beneficial for a devotee because it's mundane.
Yeah, Maharaj, one quick question.
Yeah.
But how Hitler convinced that always I get doubt because in the material world, if somebody says one work, people will not listen. How Hitler able to do this kind of a thing?
Well, his charisma, his false ego being so adamant and speaking with the full type of confidence that his philosophy was the right way to see the world, see history, and see the present, and therefore map out the future. He was good at that. He was an expert at explaining one, who the enemy is, the Jews. Number two, how to rid the enemy by killing them. And three, how people will be happy if that happens. So he had a very simple philosophy. It was eliminate the Jews, and then everyone will be happy. But that's not a viable philosophy. See, the whole purpose of human life is to purify things, not to purge things by killing them and thinking that you'll attain some kind of euphoria or happiness by murdering large number of certain people. That's not going to solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. But that was Hitler's theory. And he said, well, look, the whole problem is the Jews. Eliminate the Jews, and everyone will be happy. And pretty simple and pretty, what you would call, diabolical theory. And it didn't work really. You cannot, even if you engage in murdering many people, it doesn't solve any problem. You temporarily think that by murdering people, it solves a problem, but it doesn't really solve any problem because it's impossible to murder everybody. So eventually, those people that have been murdered, they resurrect again over a period of time. So that's not the problem. That's not the solution of any problem. So to think that you can solve a so-called problem by murdering people, it doesn't work. It works somewhat, but it's not really a solution. By purifying people, now that's a solution. But you can't have a negative thought if you want to purify people. So you have to be a well-wisher, like Prabhupada. He was a well-wisher of everyone. He was not envious of people who were becoming more and more Krishna conscious. He was happy to see that. However, when people identify with the body rather than identify with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when I say identify with the Supreme Personality of God, but to understand that we have all emanated from Krishna, and therefore we are not really independent. We have an eternal duty to follow the instructions of Krishna. And those instructions are all encompassing to benefit humanity. So it's not to eliminate one type of person because you hate them. That's not solving a problem. You might think that temporarily it solves a problem, just like Hitler. He thought temporarily that he was solving the problem of the Jews, who seemed to be very, let's say, prominent in business and in other ways. So Hitler's philosophy was, look, if we kill all the Jews, then there's no more Jews, and we take over all their wealth because now they're dead, and we'll be happy as Germans. Pretty basic philosophy of an idiot, but that doesn't solve the problem. But what solves the problem is to elevate everyone to being Krishna conscious. Then you don't have to kill anyone. You purify people. You don't kill people to achieve a goal. But Hitler thought by killing people, he would achieve a goal. And that was his mistake. Okay, so text 19. My dear Juba, the Supreme Personality of God is ever existing, but in the form of time. He is the killer of everything. He has no beginning, although he is the beginning of everything. Nor is he ever exhaustible, although everything is exhausted in due course of time. The living entities are created through the agency of the Father and killed through the agency of death. But he is perpetually free of birth and death. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The supreme authority and inconceivable power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be minutely studied by this verse. He is always limited. He is always unlimited. That means that he has no creation or end. He is, however, death in the form of time. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am death. I take away everything at the end of life. Eternal time is also without beginning, but it is the creator of all creation. It is the creator of all creatures. The example is given of touchstone, which creates many valuable stones and jewels, but does not decrease in power. Similarly, creation occurs many times. Everything is maintained, and after a time, everything is annihilated. But the original creator, the Supreme Lord, remains untouched and undiminished in power. The secondary creation is made by Brahma, but Brahma is created by the Supreme Godhead. Lord Shiva annihilates the whole creation, but at the end, he is also annihilated by Vishnu. Lord Vishnu remains. In the Vedic hymns, it is stated that in the beginning there is only Vishnu, and that he alone remains at the end. An example can help us understand the inconceivable potency of the God of the Supreme Lord. In the recent history of warfare, the Supreme Personality of Godhead created a Hitler, and before that, a Napoleon Bonaparte, and they each killed many living entities in war. But in the end, Bonaparte and Hitler were also killed. people are still very much interested in writing and reading books about Hitler and Bonaparte and how they killed so many people in war. Year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement, but no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. The devoted of the Lord, the devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They're interested only in Him, who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Yeah, if you read history books, thinking that by reading history books, you can become educated so that you don't make the same mistakes that were made previously in other times. Well, that is an ideal thought. And obviously, you can learn by what has happened in the past. But unfortunately, people forget. And then they repeat the same mistakes in every different, let's say, periods of time. So therefore, war has been going on since the beginning of time. It's still going on and will probably continue till the end of time. You would think, well, maybe people could learn a lesson by experiencing war. Well, that was the whole idea in World War One. It was such a devastating war. People said, well, this is the last war. There'll be no more war because now we understand, how to how to avoid such horrible thing with so many people dying. But yet, World War II happened, and more people died. And then they thought, well, okay, this is going to be the end of it, because now we have the United Nations. Before that, they had the League of Nations. Now they started the United Nations. And there are many flags, and the number of flags are increasing. And the whole idea is that people will now avoid war, but it's not avoided. There's still war. Even though there's so many flags now in the United Nations, many different countries, and there's always meetings going on and reconciliations trying to happen and so forth, but it doesn't end. And people have not really stopped the process of war. So therefore, why is it like that? Well, because what the materialists do is always minus Krishna. Therefore, all their plans never really attain any fruition of let's say, or solution, because they're not actually purified through Krishna consciousness. They come up with many theories and a lot of strategies, but they all end up as failures. Because Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the owner of everything. He has control of the material nature. And if you always make plans with minus Krishna, well, obviously you're going to fail. Unfortunately, that's what people do. That's what politicians do. They always minus Krishna. They might talk a little bit about God, but in the end, everything is minus Krishna. So therefore, nothing is successful. And we see that today. There have been so many wars in the past and so many attempts to stop wars and create harmony in society. But still, wars are going on. They haven't stopped. And many people are being killed. So, why is that? It's because people don't actually learn how to purify themselves through practice of Krishna consciousness. There are some people that do purify themselves, but they're very few, and therefore one war follows another war, follows another war, and follows another war. And that's going on. That means no one has actually learned the lesson of history. War doesn't solve the problem. It just temporarily looks like, well, one side wins the war, so it looks like it's temporarily solved. But as you go on in time, other things happen, and again, there's war. And again, people think, well, by killing, we will make a solution of our problems. And it never works. Yeah, temporarily, because you kill many people, it looks like, okay, now we're going to be peaceful. But over time, the same mistakes are made. And again, there is war and there's a lot of killing. Okay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in its feature of eternal time, is present in the material world and is neutral towards everyone. No one is his ally, and no one is his enemy. With the jurisdiction of the time element, everyone enjoys or suffers the result of his own karma or fruitive activities, as when the wind blows, small particles of dust fly in the air. So, according to one's particular karma, one suffers or enjoys material life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Well, what is karma? Karma is something that is accrued over time because of making mistakes and forgetting Krishna. So then one life is controlled by the reaction of karma. So in other words, instead of learning from history, people in every millennium make the same mistakes. And, okay, so purports of verse number 20. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original cause of all causes, he is not responsible for anyone's material sufferings or enjoyment. There is no such partiality on the part of the Supreme Lord. The less intelligent accuse the Supreme Lord of being partial and claim that this is why one enjoys in this material world and another suffers. But this verse specifically says that there is no such partiality on the part of the Supreme Lord. Living entities, however, are never independent. As soon as they declare their independence of the Supreme Controller, they're immediately put into the material world to try their luck freely as far as possible. When the material world is created for such misguided living entities, they create their own karma, fruitive activities, and take advantage of the time element. And thereby they create their own fortune or misfortune. Everyone is created, everyone is maintained, and everyone is ultimately killed. As far as these three things are concerned, the Lord is equal to everyone. It is according to one's karma that one suffers and enjoys. The living entity's higher or lower position is suffering and enjoying are due to his own karma. The exact word used in this connection is anisha, which means dependent on their own karma. The example is given that the government gives everyone the facilities for governmental action and management. But by one's own choice, one creates a situation which obliges him to exist under different types of consciousness. The example given in this verse is that when the wind blows, particles of dust float in the air. Gradually, lightning occurs, and then torrents of rain follow. And thus, the rainy season creates a situation of varieties in the forest. God is very kind. He gives everyone an equal chance, but by the resultant actions of one's own karma, one suffers or enjoys this material world. Okay, so this verse says the Supreme Personality of God in its feature of eternal time is present in the material world and is neutral towards everyone. No one is his ally and no one is his enemy. Within the jurisdiction of the time element, everyone enjoys or suffers the result of his own karma or fruit of activities. As when the wind blows, small particles of dust fly in the air. So, according to one's particular karma, one suffers or enjoys material life. Okay, now it's talking about karma. And what is karma? Karma means it's the result of people's thoughts and desires and actions. And they create this karma or reactive forces by making mistakes. To live karma free is actually success of the human being. How do you become karma free? You only engage in Krishna conscious activities with the intention of doing good to everyone in society, not just one group of people, but to everyone. So whenever one becomes exclusive, meaning they only want to do good to one group of people and ignore or harm another group of people, then you have a lot of karma. But when you want to do good to all people and all animals and all of nature, although we're not able to be successful at doing that, but at least we try, then everything becomes very nice. But we'll never be able to eliminate war. Why? Because there's always going to be people who are born that are demons, unfortunately. Every time there's real bad weather with lightning and rain and cold and things like that, that means that demons are being born. Now, there are parts of the world where the weather is more clement. Well, in those places, there are fewer demons being born. But in other places, like Seattle, where the weather sometimes is really bad, that means that a lot of demons are being born. So, therefore, we should be very careful not to associate with demoniac people. We should always keep the association of devotees. Okay, so this verse.
Maharaj, I
Yes.
have a question.
Yes.
So, if the weather is like terrible when demons are born,
Yeah.
when Krishna was born also there was a storm and really bad weather, right? Is there a reason for that, or
Well, it means someone was born, right? And it's like a harbinger, or a uh, a, a way of understanding that something has happened that is going to influence the future. Well, okay, let's look at the example when Jesus was born. He was born in a manger, meaning a cow barn. Right? He wasn't born in a big palace.
no.
And only a few people actually knew about his birth. Most people ignored it. And it's very interesting. He was born in a cow, let's say, barn. And he was not born in a rich family. He was born in a poor family. And his mission was not immediately realized. His mission didn't really start until he was around 30, 31, 32, 33 years old. But the message of those magi or saintly people who saw a very auspicious star. They followed the star, and they ended up seeing the birth of Jesus in the manger, in this type of manger is a place where animals are kept, right? And then they understood that, okay, the Messiah was born. The person who was going to create a atmosphere of love and devotion rather than an atmosphere of violence and hatred. So, but even with the birth of Jesus, even with the message of Jesus, he was crucified, in a very, very nasty way. And but his example of complete surrender to his father, meaning Krishna, is still a influence today. 2,000 years since he was murdered. So his mission has actually expanded all over the world. So that shows the power of purity and the power of complete surrender to the Lord, to Krishna. At one point, Jesus, when he's being crucified, he has some doubts, and he says he addresses his father who is in heaven. He says, "Why is this happening to me?" Right. But then he does not, let's say, concentrate on that. He lets it go, and he accepts his fate in order to become an example to other people of how to live a clean life. Right? So somebody has to suffer. So he accepts suffering to free other people from suffering. And so that's a very noble thing. But then the question can be asked, why does someone have to suffer so that other people don't suffer. Well, that's the nature of the material world. There are good people and bad people, and the bad people cause people to suffer, and the good people try to free people from suffering. However, the power of one person can influence people for hundreds and thousands of years. One pure person can influence society for a very long time. So, the example of Jesus Christ, 2,000 years after he was basically murdered, his influence is still present, and his message of surrendering completely to the Lord and accepting whatever his destiny is as there. And people are still talking about him and hearing about his, what he did, and benefiting in some way or other to have a better life is still going on. So that's the power of sacrifice and humility. And by the way, he was born in a barn. That is very, with cows. That's very significant. It proves that his birth was sattvic, right? It's not in a hospital with medicines and things like that, and it's not in a very rich family. He had a very poor family, but he became a great, let's say, powerful personality by his surrender to the Lord, to Krishna. At one point, he's doubtful about his surrender to Krishna, but then he doubles down and agrees to be crucified in order to purify the sins of others. However, it, in one sense, is a sad experience to see the Guru being crucified. Like, for example, Prabhupada has saved many people from having a sinful life, but he was not crucified. He left his body naturally and avoided being, like crucified like Jesus. But his example of complete dedication and surrender to Krishna is still functioning and saving many people. So there are different ways to influence society, but the way Prabhupada has influenced society is very exceptional. Like, for example, Jesus didn't write any books. Right? And he was crucified in a very horrible way. But in the life of Prabhupada, he had many challenges, but he was always protected by the mercy of Krishna. And he was able, in a few years, create a gigantic movement that's still increasing today. And his potency is still present in the Krishna consciousness movement. And still, many people are becoming purified by following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. So the influence of Prabhupada is actually increasing and is in a very, let's say, specific way helping people have a spiritual life. Well, that means that he is empowered by Krishna. And his empowerment will last for at least 10,000 years, which is a very significant statement. So Prabhupada is not an ordinary person. Now, Jesus also has, at least for 2,000 years now, he's had an influence on society. So, I mean, that's good. But Srila Prabhupada will definitely have a greater influence on society. Why? Because he has given much more information and knowledge about Krishna, more than Jesus, and more than other, so-called sadhus or whatever. So, the followers of Jesus have written a book called the New Testament. And in the Jews, they wrote the Old Testament, right? But that both the Old Testament and the New Testament are not at all equal to what Prabhupada has written. Prabhupada has written so many books, and they are all transcendental and full of good advice on how to have a spiritual life. So that means that Prabhupada's legacy will last much longer than that of Jesus or other people. It'll be it'll be influential for the next 10,000 years. That is the prophecy of Prabhupada's influence. Okay, so what time is it now? Okay, our time is over. What is our takeaway today? It is Canto 4, Chapter 11, verse 19. The last paragraph says, an example can help us to understand the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. In the recent history of warfare, the Supreme Personality of Godhead created a Hitler, and before that, a Napoleon Bonaparte. And they each killed many living entities in war. But in the end, Bonaparte and Hitler were also killed. People are still very much interested in writing and reading about Hitler and Bonaparte and how they killed so many people in war. Year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement. But no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They're interested only in Him, who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. Yeah, Prabhupada was not interested in making himself, let's say, prominent. That's right. Therefore he didn't name his movement the Bhaktivedanta Swami movement. His movement is Krishna consciousness. All about Krishna. It's not all about him. And so his purpose is to make Krishna relevant. And not and make people knowledgeable of who Krishna is. He was not interested in making himself famous. So here it says, and start takeaway today. Year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement. But no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They're interested only in Him, who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That is the purpose of Krishna consciousness. So, why does he say, year after year, many books are published for public reading regarding Hitler's killing thousands of Jews in confinement? But no one is researching who killed Hitler and who created such a gigantic killer of human beings. Interesting statement. The devotees of the Lord are not much interested in the study of the flickering history of the world. They are interested only in Him, who is the original creator, maintainer, and annihilator, meaning Krishna. This is the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. That's why the name of the movement is Krishna consciousness. It's not the Bhaktivedanta Swami movement. And see, this is the difference between the, let's say, mundane sadhus and Srila Prabhupada. The mundane sadhus usually name their movement after their own name. Right? But Srila Prabhupada did not name his movement after himself. It's not the A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami movement. No, it's Krishna consciousness movement. So that's the difference between the mundane so-called sadhus or famous people and Prabhupada. They usually name their own name to their movement. But Srila Prabhupada came to make Krishna popular and the face of his movement, not himself. That means that he's a pure devotee. Okay. But there is a certain infatuation people have for people like Hitler or Napoleon Bonaparte. Someone who becomes very powerful demon and kills many people. So they're interested in, reading about the life of Hitler, the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. But they're not so much interested in hearing about Prabhupada or Jesus. Right? Although you have the Bible, and the Bible is one of the most popular reading in history. A lot of people, I think it's still the most read book. I'm not sure if it's still the most read book, but it was for a long time. It might still be. Well, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. However, Prabhupada's books are even better. Why? Because people who read the Bible, they don't stop reading it. So they haven't learned one very essential point of having a spiritual life. There are Christians though who are not non-mediums.
Maharaj, is it not written in the Bible not to eat meat?
What's that?
Is it not written in the Bible not to eat meat? Not to eat meat.
Yeah, there's no information like that in the Bible.
Maharaj, I was searching, Maharaj.
Yeah.
It says that they can eat meat only if there is a flood or something. They are not able to survive. That's what it's written, Maharaj.
Where is that?
I think I can tell you, Maharaj. There is a termite.
Well, the modern Christians haven't read what you have read.
No, I was searching and all in the chat GPT, Maharaj. It was
Ah.
giving that actually, all the things.
What?
In the chat GPT, when I asked the questions,
Yeah.
it was giving that, Maharaj, the thing when they can do that. Because as of now, they are not supposed to eat, because it says very clearly in Bible also, they're not supposed to eat.
No, it says thou shalt not kill.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, meat consumption, like it was given. And I was asking in ChatGPT,
But the
Quran.
Christians are killing.
Yes, Maharaj. Bible, it says Genesis 1.29.
Yeah.
God originally prescribed a vegetarian diet. I have given every seed bearing plant and fruit for food. Genesis 9.3. After the flood, God permitted eating meat. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Isaiah 66.3.
Well, that just debunks what you said. What you were saying.
Yes, Maharaj, that's what it gives in ChatGPT. Isaiah 66.3 condemns sacrificing and eating animals in a sinful way. He who slaughters an ox is like one who kills a man. Romans 14.21 advises avoiding meat if it is causes others to stumble in faith. That's what given, Maharaj.
The Christians are still eating meat.
Yes, Maharaj. If there is a flood, if nothing is there, they need to eat, but they are eating.
Well, they're eating when it's sunny and
And enjoying
nice
it.
weather.
Yeah, but in Quran, I was searching, Maharaj, 2.17 to 173 permits lawful halal food, but forbids carrion, blood, pork, and meat sacrificed to other than Allah. That's what they say.
Wait a minute, I didn't understand what you said.
What they're telling in Quran,
Yeah.
permits lawful halal,
Halal.
halal,
Yeah,
halal,
halal food.
yeah, halal food, but
That includes meat.
correct, Maharaj. Yeah, food, but forbids carrion, blood, pork, and meat sacrificed to other than Allah. That's what they say, Maharaj.
Carrion means what? It means blood, right?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah.
Yeah. In other words, the Muslims try to eliminate all blood in the flesh of the dead animal, because somewhere it says in their shastra that yeah, you can eat meat, but with not one drop of blood. But is that possible?
Yes.
It's not possible. So they have what you call the basically you bring the animal to the Muslim teacher, and he slaughters the animal and tries to get all the blood out of the flesh of the animal, but it's impossible to get all the blood out. But God says that even one drop of blood will cause one's death. But it's impossible. Like, for example, there are no rules and regulations for eating apples. It doesn't say, well, if you eat an apple and you spit out the seed, you will be killed by Jesus. No, you can eat as many apples as you want. But when it comes to meat, there are a lot of rules in Islam and even in Christianity. There's a lot of rules about eating meat. Why? Because it is something that is actually forbidden. It's not really recommended. That's
Maharaj, they like the Christians, they keep citing that famous where he broke the bread and the fish. Jesus broke some, like he made a single piece of bread and fish into like thousands or something, right?
yes.
As a sort of an excuse for, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's like supernatural feats to be able to feed thousands of people with a few loaves of bread and a few fish. But he was able to do it because of his supernatural powers. So it's not really mundane meat eating. It was something that was supernatural.
Okay.
But today, the meat eating of Christians is not supernatural. You know, it is sinful, actually. And at least the Muslims, they have, halal killing, right, of the animals, and they try and get rid of all the blood in the flesh of the animal, because it says clearly in the Bible and the Quran that there should not be one drop of blood in the carrion or in the body of the animal that you're going to eat. But that's impossible. Although they try and bleed the animal as much as they can. I think the Bible says even if there's one drop of blood in the body of the animal, then it becomes sinful.
Quran.
Quran.
Quran. Okay. Yeah. That's impossible. You see, there's no rules about eating an apple. But there's plenty rules about eating meat, which means that it's not recommended.
Recommended, Maharaj. Even then, they are all eating, so they are not caring actually. Even though they say we believe in God and all. And also, it's written, Maharaj, even in for Islamic, even complete alcohol is also forbidden. That's what they say, completely forbidden.
Right.
For them.
Right.
It's in Quran.
Right. But still, there are many Muslims that just drink alcohol.
Like anything. I mean to say they are not following, simply they say, Maharaj, maybe they are also just doing puja like our Hindus, like that they are also doing some namaz. That's it. They do namaz and they go and do their own. Because they also don't know the complete Quran.
Well, then what's the difference between the Muslims and the Hindus?
Yes, Maharaj.
No difference. They both engage in sinful activities. Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there, unless you have other comments or questions. Our takeaway today. And it says, one second. How the Lord acts is nicely explained in the Vishnu Purana. Fire is situated in one place, while the heat and light produced by the fire act in many different places, in many different ways. Another example given is that the electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but by its energies, many different types of machinery move. The production is never identical with the original source, of the energy, but the original source of energy being the prime factor is simultaneously one with and different from the product. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Veda Aveda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates. As the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, is always apart or different from these actions and reactions of material nature. Well, that is an interesting statement. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, meaning Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. So, if we worship Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, then we become aloof from Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
When you say Maharaj, Garbhodaya Vishnu means Vishnu sleeping on the serpent, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they go to all the devatas will go and pray to the.
That's why it says the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu.
Okay.
Is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. So Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is transcendentally situated. However, Brahma and Shiva have some small percentage of being affected by the modes of material nature. Vishnu is not affected by the modes of material nature. So therefore, we should worship Lord Vishnu and not Brahma and not Shiva. In fact, there are very few worshippers of Brahma. Very, very few. There are a lot of worshippers of Shiva. Right? But also there are many, many worshippers of Lord Vishnu. I think there's more worshippers of Shiva. He is very popular. Okay. Anyway, what is our takeaway? Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates, and as the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. So that means that Brahma and Shiva are somewhat influenced by the material nature. Only Vishnu is transcendental to the modes of material nature. Therefore, we shouldn't worship Brahma or Shiva. We should give them respect, but not worship them. We should only worship Lord Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Harivilas. Okay, thank you very much. Please chant Hare Krishna. And try and understand Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. Achintya Veda Aveda Tattva is the perfect way of understanding. That means that simultaneously and inconceivably, everything is one and different. That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. Simultaneous they're simultaneously one and different. So we can understand oneness. We can understand difference. But simultaneous and inconceivable oneness and difference is difficult to understand. However, if we carefully read the Shastra, we will be able to understand this oneness and difference, which is existing in everything in the material world. For example, Krishna is one, but yet his different incarnations are different. So that's oneness and difference, and different. He has so many different incarnations, but they're all one. They're all the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's an example of oneness and difference. So some people worship Krishna in his original form. Some people worship Krishna as Varaha. So that is oneness and difference. We have different incarnations of the Lord, but they're all equally the Lord. So there's oneness and difference. That's the nature of the material world. Just like a father is also a son. So he's one with his children, and he's different than his father. Right? But also he's one with his father. So in one sense, he's one and different. Right? That is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms, as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates. As the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. So therefore, Krishna is also one and different. He's one with Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, but he's different with Brahma and Shiva. But this is, this is a little difficult to understand. See, just like the Muslims, they made it very easy to understand it. They said, God is Wahad Allah, is one. There's no one and different, it's just one. So it's a simple philosophy that there's only one God. But when you come to Hinduism, there are many gods, right? So that's like confusing. But when you come to Krishna consciousness, there is one and many simultaneously. So you have different incarnations of God, and they're all equal. So Islam has only oneness, and materialism, there's all kinds of varieties. But in Krishna consciousness, there's one and simultaneously many. So that's why the Krishna consciousness philosophy is superior. It shows the oneness and diversity of everything. That's called Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva. We are all the sons of Krishna, but we also have our own identity. So there's oneness and difference. The fact that we're all worshippers of Krishna makes us one, but we have the ability to have different understandings of the Lord. So some people are Christians, some people are Muslims, some people are Baha'is, and so forth. So there are different ways of worship and different conceptions of who is God. But actually, there's only one God. It's not that there's many gods. And there's only one, let's say, way of understanding who God is. That has not been completely understood by the Muslims and the Christians. But in Krishna consciousness, we have the philosophy of Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, that simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. That is the correct way to see things. Other religions have one way to see things. Other religions, they have two ways of seeing things. But in Krishna consciousness, we have simultaneously one and different way of seeing things. So that is the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, or Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya is one with Krishna, but is also acting differently in his specific incarnation. So Krishna sometimes appears as Varaha. Well, he's one and different, because he also can appear as other incarnations. So that one and difference is the unique, let's say, philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So our takeaway is, it says, therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms, as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates. As the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And he is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. That means Garbhodakshay Vishnu is transcendental to material nature. On the other hand, Brahma and Shiva are slightly influenced by the forces of material nature. But Garbhodakshay Vishnu is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. So it was in the history of Vaishnavism, there was at one time a desire to understand who is exactly the Supreme Personality of God. So they asked one devotee to find out. And he tested Brahma, and then Shiva, and then Vishnu. And he came out with the conviction that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishnu. Right? So that question was settled a long time ago, but still people are arguing today about the same issue. Who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Okay, we'll stop on that point. And thank you very much. Of course,
Krishna Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama.